Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Untangle 101 webinar series. Today, we'll be discussing Untangle's NG Firewall product, what it does, and how it can help you in your state or local government network. If you're unfamiliar with Untangle and work in the public sector, whether you are a state and local government, private public library, then this webinar is perfect for you. My name is Shannon Bonfiglio. I'm part of the marketing team here at Untangle, and I'll be your host today. I also have our sales engineer, Chad McNaughton, who will be taking us through the presentation and doing the demo throughout this. Just a few housekeeping rules before we get started. Please be sure you're selecting the correct audio preference on the right-hand side. If you do select to use a phone, you will need to dial in and use the access code provided. As always, we'll be answering questions in the Q&A box on the right-hand side. We have a few staff members on hand, so if you have any questions about the product or Untangle, please just submit those and we will answer those. If we don't get to your question, or if you have a very specific question, please email us at sales@untangle.com so we can better assist you. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded, so you'll be able to share the webinar or rewatch it at your own convenience. As always, we will send a follow-up email to everyone that registered with the link to that. And with that, I will pass it on over to Chad.
All right, thanks, Shannon. Morning, everyone, afternoon, wherever you're at. Thanks for joining us. As Shannon mentioned, this is an Untangle 101 series webinar, so I always reiterate, we're not going to do deep dives into the software. We're not going to be jumping down any rabbit holes of actual, web filtering, that kind of thing. So it'll be a very general overview with some examples on how this can help in a local state government, like Shannon said, library setting, that kind of thing. Libraries in particular are getting a little bit tricky. They have some real strict compliance standards, but they also have this, freedom of information compliance thing. So if you're, a technician, librarian, that kind of thing, and you're concerned about the kind of stuff that's being visited on the web and your network, that kind of thing, you do have compliance standards to follow, and Untangle can help with all of that. On my screen here, you can see that there is a pretty big opportunity right now in the government cybersecurity sector. Over 30,000 security breaches were reported by government agencies just in 2016. They do have some of the lowest performing cybersecurity ratings, and I'm not just talking about the big government that we all think of, a big building. This could be City Hall at a tiny little municipality somewhere, a little rural sheriff's office, things like that. The public sector is becoming one of the top 3 industries targeted for data breaches. A lot of these organizations do store and transfer very, very sensitive data. That's the reason for all these compliance standards now is, PPI personally or PII personally identifiable information, that kind of stuff. This falls under PCI compliance, and then we'll also fall under things like SIPA and CJIS. So as you can see, public sector entities were the 3rd most breach victim at 12% here recently. This is just a sign of the times, to be honest. Everyone's a target now, unfortunately. So the big disadvantage for government's cybersecurity protection, a lot of it comes down to a lack of budget and or resources. A great example is something I just mentioned, a really small, city hall in a little rural town. Maybe they only have 10 or 12 computers, 5 or 6 people there all day. That kind of organization, to me, doesn't always feel that they're a target, and it's a tough thing to be retroactive about, because by then it's too late. You've been hit with malware, ransomware, or something like that. You've gotten a breach of data, and that's a big thing. Some of the fines from some of that stuff are way, way worse than a subscription cost for something like Untangle. Resources is another thing that comes down, or that it comes down to, not all of these little organizations will have a full-time network admin, for example. Maybe they don't even have a full-time IT staff. So things like that are tricky, but that's why Untangle is so great. We can help with trialing the software. You have support during the trial. Our support team is located here in Colorado, and they can be kind of your support for the Untangle device, even if you don't have a dedicated network admin on premises. And then, like I mentioned repeatedly a few times, getting compliant with all these different regulations in the public sector is very interesting and intimidating, honestly. this can be kind of overwhelming especially to small organizations. And in this space, I don't think a lot of bigger products have focused on smaller government, public sector entities like we do. And you can see that, 62% of these breaches have occurred by external factors. So that's a client on the outside getting into your system. Untangle fundamentally stops that from day one. We come out of the box with no open network ports. So if there's a hole to or from the outside world that your network needs, you have to go punch that hole in Untangle. As you can see, 41% of these breaches are related to espionage. So, well over half are not, any kind of espionage, spy games, that kind of stuff. They're just bored folks looking for a server to crack. So that's a problem as well. It's not always kind of a state mandated espionage cyber attack type thing. And in general, it can take governments years to learn they've been breached. There was a pretty recent breach here in Colorado where I work and live that actually affected me, and I didn't know it for months. My voter registration information was actually compromised in a data breach here in a county that I have never lived in or voted in, which was interesting to me. So that took almost 7 months before it was revealed. And, nothing's happened so far. I've put alerts on, all my credit stuff and that kind of thing. So I've gotten lucky, but it's one of those things where I was extremely frustrated because that happened. And for one, I didn't feel like they needed my data because I don't live there, but also they didn't really inform me very quickly. So, I got a letter from a county clerk in a county where I don't live, and I was immediately terrified, of course, but that's what it was letting me know, was that my data had been breached, and they had basically seen my, driver's license number, address, social security number, that kind of stuff. So it's not always a thing where you think you're being proactive. Sometimes you think you are and you're not. So being proactive is tough, but we can help with that. And it's always cheaper than being retroactive and paying fines and getting breached. So because this is an Untangle 101 series, I will stop rambling for a second and introduce you all to Untangle. If you're new, Untangle is not just a firewall. It's not just a web filter. It's what's now called a unified threat management device. So Untangle falls pretty comfortably under the UTM label now. But we do focus on small and medium-sized businesses and state and local governments. So it's a very quick, easy thing to deploy. If there's something, any kind of activity you've seen on your network that you're concerned about, if we get Untangle online, we instantly become a network monitor, and then from there we can start taking steps to either eliminate or dissuade, that kind of behavior. This is a very low-cost subscription-based software. So Untangle is a software company. We also offer a line of appliances, which we can talk about, and come with Untangle pre-installed. But this is a Linux server, so you can install Untangle on all kinds of custom hardware. We'll talk about deployments here in a bit. But it is a software, subscription-based software solution. And like I said, you can save money just by leveraging existing hardware. If you have something sitting in a closet that's, even close to our specs, I bet it'll run Untangle. We might as well try. We also have these, like I said, line of appliances. So you can grab a turnkey appliance from us with Untangle already installed. All you have to do is basically set it up into router or bridge mode, however you want to install us, and then apply any licensing. That's what makes it so easy to kind of plug and play these deployments, because you can, for example, if you have a lot of Untangles and everyone needs the same rules, you can actually set those all up with one general config, save that in our command center in the cloud, back up the config to multiple devices, that kind of thing, if they all have matching compatible software, obviously. And we do have multiple channels of support. You can get help from our support team here in Colorado. Like I said, they're all Colorado-based. We don't outsource support. It's all here in the U.S. And they win awards for us. I'll put our support up against anyone. They're great. But outside of that, if you don't have an access to live support, for example, to get someone on the phone, you can always email us at support@untangle.com. You can use our user forums, our wiki page that our engineers and QA team keep up to date. You can hit me up on Spiceworks and I'll help out. There's a lot of ways to get help with Untangle. And we do have these proactive, actionable alerts and notifications now. So this is both on premise on the box, and then in our cloud centralized management as well. You can create alerts. And the advanced support is basically remote support. Your box is eligible for things like centralized management and remote access for our support team here. We can always have a tech remote in, look at your configuration if you need help. We also offer professional services like a system installation and configuration service. If you're installing on custom hardware and you just want help with that, we can offer that service for an additional fee, as well as just system optimizations to kind of tweak your Untangle. And then also we can do a conversion service, which is actually converting your settings from an older device. Maybe you have a Sonic wall or a Fortinet in front of us and we're going to replace that. We can actually help convert those settings over to the Untangle before we even ship you the device. So that can help, and I think that helps with the plug and play aspect of it, as well as the transparency. Untangle is an inline appliance. This is not a proxy. We don't do reverse proxying, but we are a very transparent thing on the network. No one signs into Untangle by default unless you need them to. No one knows we exist, really. The only things we ever deploy to an endpoint would be an OpenVPN client or a root certificate. So things like that make it simple. And I think Untangle as a company is actually very transparent too. Our pricing's online, our specs are online, that kind of stuff. So if you do need help, if you have any questions, hit us up online, hit us up on the forums, on Spiceworks. There's a lot of ways to get help. And if you're kind of new to Untangle, we have a very active YouTube channel. You'll get a link to it since you've registered for this webinar. And more and more videos are being uploaded all the time, even quick little 2-3 minute videos that I make for new features. So there's a lot of ways to get help and a lot of ways to get Untangle on the network. So speaking of getting Untangle on the network, let's talk a bit about some of the products we actually offer. So Untangle NG Firewall is our basic software platform for deploying our subscription-based paid licenses and apps. So when we go in and install Untangle, it gives you by default a 2-week trial of our complete package. If you don't apply any paid licensing, after that 2 weeks, it expires, and then it reverts to our free package, which has some handy stuff in it, firewall, captive portal, reports. But the real magic happens through our paid apps. And most of those will come down to things like, web filter and SSL Inspector, directory connector to see Active Directory radius usernames. But one of the interesting things about it, our apps at layer 7 are multi-threaded. So they all inspect traffic simultaneously and enforce rules simultaneously. So we're not doing a full top-down, wait for bandwidth control to hit after web filter hits kind of order. It's all simultaneously inspected. And then our reports are honestly as good as I can find in our industry these days. They're completely customizable now with live traffic. Untangle does deep packet inspection. So when we're a man in the middle, when we're doing things like SSL inspection and intrusion prevention and virus scanning, these reports will be, not exactly real time. They're 15, 20 seconds delayed, something like that, but it's not a problem. So you get a dashboard with real-time reporting and then customizable reports showing pretty much any piece of network traffic that we're inspecting. Some of the features haven't changed here for a bit, but we are adding new apps to this feature list almost every version update. You can see basically, with our 6 little categories here, we're doing everything from firewalling and intrusion prevention there at layer 7 all the way to, web filtering with HTTPS decryption. We're doing traffic shaping and WAN failover balancing. We do have a lot of flavors of VPN now. You can see we have IPsec, OpenVPN, and Tunnel VPN there under Connect. IPsec VPN is the only one of those that's a paid option. Tunnel VPN does some very interesting things for remote sites. For example, if you have a central library and little remote library sites, if those tiny libraries have a box with Tunnel VPN, we can basically pipe them through one central licensed Untangle server at quote unquote headquarters. And then, kind of keep costs down that way and just tunnel all of your traffic through your apps at headquarters. So Tunnel VPN is a very interesting new app. And then you can see we do, policy management. We will connect to any directory you have for authentication. And then the add-ons just include Branding Manager, which lets you change our Untangle signage, logo, verbiage, all that stuff in the config to your organization's logos and verbiage. And then that includes live support too. What we're going to look at here on my demo server is our complete package. So that's what most of you guys will qualify for under the public sector license. So the public sector complete package is every piece of software we make, including live support. So everything you see here will be available to you with that public sector license or with your trial when you download that to test. I mentioned some of these deployment methods. We are basically a hybrid cloud product. So the box can be cloud managed It can be remotely managed, from your Android phone if you need to. We do have hardware, like I said, so we're an on-premise gateway, but we do connect to the Untangle cloud for things like threat intelligence with malware and antivirus and things like that. I also mentioned the virtual pipelining. So we don't proxy chain these apps. Everything's inspected by all the apps simultaneously when traffic's being filtered at layer 7. So that's a pretty efficient way to do things in my experience. This runs Linux Debian, so we're pretty efficient from the start anyway, as far as processing power and memory usage and things like that go. But the virtual pipelining really slims that down and reduces processing and overhead. And you can have a pretty light hardware footprint. Some of these devices are really small. The little U25 will fit in my pocket. So whether it's our hardware or your hardware, that's not really our concern. If your budget allows for our hardware, that's awesome. You'll get a hardware warranty. You'll have support on the box. You can RMA it, that kind of stuff. But if you're a hardware people and you like building your own, maintaining your own, or if the budget just doesn't have the room for our hardware, you can always look at our specs online or on our wiki and basically source your own. You'll see we do have virtual cloud deployment there now too. So we do have beta deployments for Amazon and Microsoft clouds now. So for AWS and Azure, we're in beta for those, and those are working pretty well. You'll see my demo server is actually hosted in the Amazon cloud now. Speaking of the cloud, Untangle has built our own cloud infrastructure. It's a little over a year old now, and it's doing a couple of interesting things. One of those is Scout IQ. I mentioned this threat and intelligence cloud connection that we do here. This is through our virus blocker apps. It's included at no extra cost for both apps. And this is a really handy thing. So your virus blocker app on Untangle will call out to our Scout IQ cloud to get telemetry data and zero-day information from malware and ransomware and things like that. It's identifying threats that are seen in the wild. And like I said, it's no additional cost. So if you want to go to untangle.com under cloud, you'll see a Scout IQ link. You can read more about it. There's also an intelligence map right there, and that'll show you real-time telemetry data being transferred. The long and short of that is when an Untangle box somewhere around the world sees a piece of malware and is maybe a zero-day thing or has a new exploit, something like that tied to it, that Untangle box grabs the telemetry data from where that malware came from, the distribution point, and it sends that to Scout IQ, which then analyzes it and then updates all the other Untangles around the world. So the first Untangle to see something new shares that with everyone through our cloud system. So I'm one of our pre-sales engineers as well, and so I hear that question a lot: how much data are you taking into my cloud? What's your cloud doing? Are you guys seeing this data? And we're not. All we're seeing is telemetry data from virus signatures. So that kind of thing, people are reticent to connect to clouds these days, and I understand that in theory. I'm the same way for the most part, but Scout IQ is an amazingly cool tool, and it's really handy. I saw it do its job when WannaCry happened about 10 months ago, almost a year ago. It does a really interesting thing, and it's done a really good job of it. The other aspect of our cloud infrastructure is Command Center. So I mentioned we do have centralized management in the cloud now. So as we're talking about this public sector licensing, keep in mind that actual complete package makes your device eligible for centralized management. So that box would be available in the cloud, like the image you see here. You'll get a dashboard that shows all your appliances. You get reporting, alerts. You can create sub-admins, more or less. We don't do that on the box still, but in Command Center, if you have another IT admin or 2 or 3 that help manage your servers, we can actually create them as users who only have access to the servers you give them access to. So when they log in, they won't see any of your account information. They don't see, billing or credit card information, that kind of stuff. One of the absolute greatest things we've done with Command Center is create an alert engine. So Untangle does have on-box alerting, and it's a really powerful thing that you can set up. But sometimes things happen, and maybe the box doesn't have internet. Maybe the box is down. Well, it's probably not going to be able to alert you if it's down. So we can create alerts based on strings in the cloud now and set those up with different notification profiles for your team. We can leverage webhooks, PagerDuty, Slack. I believe VictorOps is the other one, or just email. So you can manage all your licensing, all your updates, backups, all that stuff across your fleet here. The first 5 eligible servers you have will show up there for free. After that, there's a little pricing structure, kind of like our license bands that your sales rep can shoot you some info on. And this is just a great way to reduce overhead. There's more than one client we have that is a county library, with little branches out in rural areas. And sometimes it's a 2-hour drive to get to a device, at the other branch. So now you can actually log into Command Center, and with one click, you can get remote access to that server. And this means you don't always have to leave those access rules open at layer 3 that let everyone, see this thing through SSH. So I've talked a little bit about the appliances we offer. This is a few of them right here. So we do start pretty small. Like I said, that little U25 thing right there, U25W in the top left, I mean, I think fits in my back pocket. It's rated for about 20 to 25 devices. Outside of that, on the right, you can see I have a new X series line. So the U25X is actually really, really nice. These are, little form factor turnkey boxes. So you can get a little box like that with Untangle pre-installed and then assign any licensing and customize it like you want. For bigger environments, we do go up to a mid-market size. Our U150-500 those are basically our workhorses. Those things are rock stars. Those just don't come back to us, to be honest. And then for a bigger, corporate entity, large campus kind of environment, we would go into our M series, which goes up to 1,500 or to 3,000 devices, respectively. If you're above the 3,000 device level or so, we would probably look into custom hardware for you. So we would want to help you source that and help you size it out. And we can do that on a scope of project call. We can set up a demo with me. We can jump online and talk. Just let us know. You can always email presales@untangle.com to set up a demo if you'd like. But that's a big part of what we do here in presales is sizing the hardware correctly. Untangle software is extremely scalable. I've seen it, filtering thousands and thousands of devices through a virtual environment or a huge piece of custom hardware. So don't sweat that with your licensing or with the software. The licensing is real easy to upgrade. The software is very scalable. What we want to do is get you sized right with either a physical piece of hardware or a virtual machine to fit your network. I don't want you to come in and, get one of our U500s if you've got 800 devices on the network and, then we've got a problem. So if you have any questions, be sure to let us know, but all the specs for these devices are on our website as well. So I think I've mentioned some of this a little bit, but some of the key differentiators I think between Untangle and other companies in this space are obviously the ease of deployment and ease of use. I actually came into Untangle without much of a networking background. I was an IT person running a network operations center, but had never really used a Linux firewall before. And here I am 3 years in, and I'm not quite an expert, but it's a really simple thing to get down. I love the interactivity of our GUI. I like the graphicalness of every single app we have. It's just a very different feel, I think, as a product and as a company. So Untangle is built specifically for government deployments, that kind of thing, because of our best practices. We do a lot of filtering out of the gate, and we do offer enterprise level security with, like I said, kind of consumer level simplicity. This is a browser-based UVM that installs even on a virtual machine. So we load a little browser called Chromium that installs the Untangle virtual machine, and then you see basically browser-based user interfaces. Sorry. And like it says, we do have industry-leading reporting on the box. Untangle can keep a year of data now in our reporting engine. There's no report that I found we can't make. Like I said, some of our best practices are just our default settings when you install the recommended apps. That's kind of our, best practice. This is what we think you need minimum out of the box, these apps, these filters. You can also create policies and manage them with a global top-down approach. This is going to leverage Active Directory, Radius, Google authentication, all kinds of different things. And we do have layer 3 and layer 7 traffic shaping for QoS and bandwidth control. Very comprehensive shaping capabilities with quotas, penalty boxes. We could throttle mobile apps, things like that. And then the automatic upgrades just mean it's always up to date. None of our software upgrades ever cost any money. If you set it to automatically update, you'll get automatic upgrades. We never do a full-on upgrade with a reboot kernel update, sometimes without telling folks. So if you want to set it to automatic upgrades, that's a pretty simple thing. Not much changes usually, unless we have a big new version coming out that we announce. And this is as flexible and cost competitive as you can find, with being able to use your own hardware, virtual environments, that kind of thing. The discounts that we offer on the public sector complete package. This is a really, really interesting solution and can really open up things in your budget, I think. And like I said, we do have, we start out as freemium. You download from untangle.com and you get our trial with the paid apps Once that expires, you're on the free package, and then you basically just assign licensing. So you could technically put Untangle in line for 2 weeks on a trial, get everything set up, get your configuration saved, and then if you decide to purchase Untangle, you've already got the configuration. You can really just kind of plug it in and restore that, and then you're back up and running. And then I've mentioned, a couple times the centralized management and on-box reports are all included. No new hardware for any reporting, SSL inspection, any of that kind of stuff. We are getting a little recognition here nowadays. For those of you that are new and maybe haven't heard of Untangle, we're not a young company anymore in this industry, I don't think. We were founded in 2003. We're celebrating our 15th year here. But you can see, we're starting to win awards. We're becoming pretty well received in things like the Spiceworks community. Our user forums are really, really active, have a lot of helpful users. Our user forums are a great resource if you're researching Untangle, or if you have, a 2 a.m. on a Sunday question, throw it in the forums, and Skynight or Webfool might answer you before we do. So those guys are as smart as we are. So just take what they say and run with it. We do have a lot of help out there, and we are I feel becoming a pretty respected company in this industry, even though we're still less than 40 people worldwide. We're doing some really interesting things and making some pretty big companies a little bit nervous, which I think is fun. As you can see, we also have some new case studies on the site. It's just some customer quotes from some different organizations around the country, singing Untangle's praises, how easy things were to do, how much we help, that kind of stuff. There are some cool new video case studies on our site too, under the resources tab or case studies tab there, if you want to go look. And now I'm going to pop out of the slide deck here, and we're going to jump over to my actual live demo server. So let me get out of this here. So you guys are seeing demo.untangle.com right now. This is our live demo server. Like I said, this is actually hosted in the Amazon cloud now. So, it's still in beta, like I said, but it's getting pretty stable enough for our demo server. When you log into an Untangle, it throws you into your dashboard like this. This is completely customizable. If you guys want to watch a specific user, specific type of traffic, if there's a report that you want to see all day, this can all be customized to make it whatever you want. Just keep that in mind. No, almost every piece of Untangle can be customized based on view and information presented. By default, we show an hour of information in these widgets. Maybe you want to see an entire workday. We can change that here. If you want to see all query events, you want to see what's being Googled by your employees, things like that. We can drag that up to the top so you can not have to scroll. Now it's just up at the top of our report. We can also, for example, connect to something like Active Directory that will give us usernames rather than just these client IP addresses. So if we do that, I would probably want to come in here and say, turn off the host names widgets because they're showing IPs. And then I would want to come over here and add username widgets. As you can see, you just start typing, and it'll present those to you. Top usernames by request, I can add that to my dashboard right there. It's like, well, you can see my demo server doesn't have usernames, but I can add that to the dashboard right there, and then same thing, drag it around however I want to do. This is a really, really dynamic interface. I don't know that there's another one like this in our industry. If there is, I haven't found it. This scales to match whatever it's displayed on. You don't need an app for your phone or your tablet or anything like that. It will just display normally. And then these are, actually pulling reporting data. So you saw across the top, we had server metrics and geolocation. This is an actual report from application control showing me the mobile apps being used the most. So if I want to look at this fully, I can go click right here on Open in Reports. We can also change the size of these widgets now and the refresh rate here. And we can also download the image. If there's a non-admin or someone who's not set up to receive summary reports, and they want a piece of information right now, a boss or a teacher or a librarian, you can just download a quick chart and shoot it to them. So that downloads a PNG file. You can just send that in an email. We can also set them up as reports users though to get summary reports if they want. So I'm going to click Open in Reports right here so we can see the full report over here in our reports viewer. So as you can see, this is a pretty clean interface. I think that our reports are some of the nicest looking there are, and like I said, the level of reporting that you can get from Untangle is industry standard. Like I said, we keep up to a year of data now in the engine, and all of this can be completely customized. If you need to add any fields to these, you can come in here and run through all the SQL conditions. You can run through all the events tables. If though you would rather start from scratch, Untangle version 13.2 here actually has a new create blank report. So we've never been able to create a report from scratch before. As you can see from that settings window I was just in, it has a bit of a learning curve, obviously, but this is a lot more simple, I think. Our director of QA, John Coffin, just did a webinar about this last week, creating custom reports. That's on our YouTube channel. But this is a pretty clean interface. You just come in here and you say, I want to look at this event, this table. I want it to pull from this category, and you create your report. This is a really interesting thing because I've gone through pretty extensively our reports. There's about 400 by default, and in my experience doing pre-sales and being an administrative at Untangle, there's just not a report we can't make now. If you're just not seeing something you're looking for, if the search bar is not pulling up the report you're wanting, let us know. Get in touch with support. We can walk you through creating a customized report, or just going in and finding a report that's 1 or 2 conditions away, and then maybe tweaking a condition or 2 from those actual reports. So that was just kind of a quick touch on the reports and the dashboard, because they're right there on the kind of front loading page of the GUIs. I will not be diving into this config menu right now. This is Untangle 101. I don't want to jump down any rabbit holes, but I want to point out that this is where we can do a lot of interesting things, like set up a local directory if you don't have authentication. I keep going back to a really small library as an example, because if the library I used to work in didn't have a domain controller, it was too small. So without employee usernames, the reporting could be tough. So you could set up a local directory here with usernames and that kind of stuff if you wanted. This is also where we can set up the alerts on the Untangle under events. And this is where our network configurations live. So whether Untangle is installed in bridge mode or router mode, some of this will be very helpful. Some of this will be pretty useless. I don't know that we'll hand out DHCP in bridge mode. Usually, it happens sometimes, but not commonly. This is also where we can do our port forwarding and natting, SNatting and DNatting for folks who are as old as me. And the bypass rules live here. So when there's devices on your network like VoIP or printers or security cameras that you don't want to filter, we put those into a bypass rule right here. We can do it by IPs, we can do it by interface, or as you can see, by port or by tag. So this is an important thing to me, especially in those smaller environments where maybe we're only filtering, 25, 40 devices, something like that. If we're trying to filter 25 devices and you're seeing 35 in DHCP, we would maybe want to go look at that. Maybe 10 of those are cameras or phones or things like that. Maybe we can bypass them and keep your licensing small. So keep that in mind too, there under config network. And the last thing I want to touch on here is just the troubleshooting tab. This is where you can do pings and speed tests, trace routes, all that kind of stuff from the actual Untangle itself. So when you click on apps on Untangle, here on our demo server, this is going to show you every single application we make. A couple of these are actually redundant. You can see I'm getting some admin alerts over here. Redundant apps, web filter and web monitor, spam blocker light. So in your situation, if you install our complete package, you likely won't see spam blocker light or web monitor because they get overwritten by the full version of spam blocker and web filter. Same exact functions with more capabilities in the paid versions. As far as spam blocker and fish blocker go, unless you have an actual mail server using SMTP port 25, you really actually don't even need to install those apps. That's the only email they see. I think some of the most important apps in here for folks in the public sector will be things like Directory Connector and Policy Manager and Web Filter. So I'm going to jump through a couple of those here real quick and just give you a real light kind of dip a pinky toe in the shallow end here, kind of talk about how they work. Directory Connector is going to be the first one because I think this is more or less step one, day one, after you get Untangle installed. If you have something like Active Directory and you need to leverage it, we would need to come in here and say, okay, we're going to leverage Active Directory, or maybe you use Radius or Google. In a public sector, Active Directory is by far the most common of these. So that's what I'm going to use as an example. For here on our demo server, we would enable it. And you can see we've already got one entered here. This is a fake Active Directory, obviously, it's not real. So when you connect yours, it will look like this. You just enter your information. If it's a secure port, let us know. And then you'll run an Active Directory test. It's either going to succeed or fail. And if it succeeds, we're connected. So we're officially getting information and we're going to see your users, but not yet, because the part you have to do for us is getting the Active Directory notification API on your domain controller. So I mentioned earlier, by default, nobody logs into Untangle. You know, we're a transparent thing. We just sit there and filter your traffic. You can, however, stand up a captive portal, which authenticates a number of ways. If you have like guest Wi-Fi and you want to authenticate with Facebook or Google, we could do that for guests. But for employees on a domain, it's a very important thing that we get this API to your domain controller. This is what actually says, oh, Joe just logged in. Here's jsmith2 Untangle. That's his actual username from the domain controller. So this is a very important part to getting authentication working. Once that's done, we'll keep moving along my hypothetical installation here, and we'll probably want to start creating some policies. Our demo server is basically set up to look like kind of a small school. So you can see we have a default policy right here. That was all the apps we were just looking at. You can see they're all installed and running. And then indented below that are teacher and student lab policies. These are indented because they're inheriting the permissions from default. So when you add a new policy, it gives you the option to give that policy a parent. So if your next policy has pretty similar rules, you can say, let the student lab policy inherit the student policy. The reason this is so handy is because we can still customize everything for each policy. As you can see on my default here, all the apps are installed. If we go down to student policy, only web filter is installed. That's because they need different rules than students or teachers. So we would come here and install that app for them into their policy, and then we can customize it. This is a really interesting engine. It's very clean. The way we actually send people through, though, are these rules. So if you create a policy and don't create a rule, like you can see here on my demo server, we don't have any rules created. So basically all these policies are pointless below default. I don't have any rules created, so that means everyone is going into default. So the rules have a lot of different conditions. So we can do, you know, username is, like I said, jsmith2. We can do time of day, day of week. We can do source address interface. Maybe everyone coming in on a certain VLAN gets these apps. Maybe everyone coming in on a wireless access point, you know, public internet, that kind of stuff gets these apps. We can get this, you know, going with a lot of conditions here in certain policies. The most common and easiest and cleanest, if you have Active Directory, will be user in group or username. For example, if I wanted to, I could say user in group is, and I would actually see a drop down of all my groups right there. I'm just going to type in teachers. We're in pretend world here, theater of the mind. And so anyone authenticating with teachers, I would always want them to come through the teacher policy. And so I would just say teachers only. Well, if I could learn to type right, I would. And then we say done. And so now that rule will catch any teacher that authenticates against Active Directory. I don't care if this teacher is on their cell phone, in their car, in the parking lot. If they're getting a portal that makes them authenticate, that username is what we care about. I don't care about the device. I don't care about any of that stuff. We're seeing their username from the group. So this is a very absolute thing. It's really hard to get around. But as I showed you in the conditions, there's a lot of different ways to do this. So we can do it by IP, by interface. It's not always going to be a username, user group rule, because not everyone has something like Active Directory or Radius. Once that's set up, you know, you have access to all the toys here, and you can start doing some really fun things. If you need to, for example, really filter the internet, we would want to set up our SSL Inspector app to push our Untangle root certificate to your local devices. You can do that actually through Active Directory with group policy. We can do it through a captive portal. And then one of these rules will say, this is what, you know, let's Untangle block Facebook, for example. If you're not familiar, this is basically what's called certificate-based decryption. This makes Untangle a trusted man in the middle decrypting HTTPS traffic. Facebook's a good example because it's 100% encrypted with HTTPS. So if we want to block it or filter it or even report on it, we need this rule created. The good news is these 14 rules are created by default for you. These will be built in. Those are just very popular services that we've noticed use HTTPS encryption. So the hard part of this is the level of encryption that's happening on the internet now. It's at about 80%. That's based on some fun stats from places like Let's Encrypt. If you go to let'sencrypt.org and go to the stats page, you'll see that we are at about 80% HTTPS encryption. This is drastic here over the last couple of years. As you can see, you know, it's gone up almost 40, 50%. So because 80% of the entire web is encrypted, we need to do decryption. I'm sorry. That actually decrypts HTTPS to HTTP, lets us see it, and then we re-encrypt it, and throw it back out. So SSL Inspector is doing a very, very powerful thing with a very simple condition that you saw. Once that's set up, we have access to a database of about 600 million URLs in this category list here. It's provided by a company called Zavello. They're out here in Denver, just about 30 minutes from my office. And this is not an old school on-device localized URL list. I see other companies touting certain things they do and knocking URL lists, and they should knock lists. Those are fairly outdated. This is a very dynamic cloud database that does real-time lookups anytime someone on your network goes to the internet. That does an instant lookup to Zavello's cloud database, and it's in real time, and those updates are done by human employees in real time. So as you can see, this is some blocking we do out of the gate: proxy sites, inappropriate things, malware, phishing, stuff like that. You can also come and do a quick lookup. Someone comes to you and says, you know, I'm trying to go to ESPN, but it's getting blocked. Did you block sports? You say, no, I didn't block sports, but you blocked streaming video. So a site could be in up to 3 categories, and any one of these will block ESPN.com. At that point, you would then come over here to past sites, and if you wanted to, you could add ESPN.com in your whitelist so people could have access to it. Block sites is your blacklist. Both of these use glob matching for URL syntax. If you're familiar with it, we can do a lot of wildcarding within a URL to catch different parts of the URL. As you can see, we're trying by default to block any site that mentions web proxy in the URL, trying to keep people from getting around your filter. We can also do some real interesting things on the rules tab here within web filter. This is an interesting way to get kind of granularity within a policy. So if there's one teacher, for example, that needs access to a site or a web filter category that no one else has, we can come give them access to that here, or block access. So keep that in mind when you think policy creation. We do that for groups, and you could create a policy for one separate person. That's, I don't know, a little extraneous to me, maybe a little extra work, because now we can come over here. As you can see, web filter can pull data and rules and conditions from about 4 different apps. It's looking at mobile apps here in app control, SSL inspection, and then also the web filter and directory connector apps. So it's a really powerful little tool, the rules tab there. I use it a lot on my personal Untangle. I have a policy on my Untangle at home for open Wi-Fi, but I go in there and I tend to create quick little rules and things like that when I see people abusing it or doing things I don't like. One of the ones I use is actually that rule number 1, blocking large downloads from downloads under games. I don't let people download games on my Wi-Fi. We can also do some HTTPS inspection with SNI. I did want to mention this before we wrap up here, because not every device in the world will accept the Untangle root certificate. A good example is an Android phone running Android 7.0 or later. Google has eliminated that capability. It only recognizes Google now. Another example that's becoming more and more popular is an IoT device, an Internet of Things device, like a smart thermostat or an Amazon Echo, that kind of thing. These devices communicate over the SSL. So they use HTTPS, but they don't have browsers, which means they don't have certificate stores, which means you cannot put the certificate on that device. So you can't decrypt their HTTPS. So that's a complicated thing, and people tend to think we can't filter those devices. We can catch a lot of that through SNI here. But the more important thing to remember is if you have a smart thermostat or an Amazon Echo, that kind of stuff, when you put Untangle on your network, those devices are immediately sealed off to the world because, like I said earlier, we don't have any open network ports by default. So those boxes are protected behind us. No, we can't exactly step in and decrypt all their encrypted traffic because of the way they function, but they're protected. So keep that in mind too. You know, it's become a pretty common thing for hackers and malicious actors to try to enslave your IoT devices into a what's called a botnet army. So then they can use your processing power to do, you know, nefarious things, try to DDoS servers, that kind of thing. The new fun thing is people compromising your machines and your computers to do crypto mining for themselves. So they're going to steal your CPU power to mine all that stuff, and that's becoming a problem, you know, in public sector networks and home environments. You know, that's not a joke anymore. I hate to say that we're all targets, but we really are, you know, in 2018. And it's a lot harder to be, like I said, retroactive, because by then it's too late. You know, you've either been hit with something like ransomware, which could be immensely nefarious and hard to get rid of, or even just a simple, you know, phishing scam, something like that your employees click on. a school district up here in Boulder, Colorado, a couple years ago got hit with a phishing scam, and it cost them almost $900,000 over a few months because they didn't know they were talking to the wrong people through email. So things like that are tough. Some of this comes down to employee education, user education. I think Untangle can help with that a lot because our virus blockers tend to take end users out of the equations. We block those files and those malware signatures at the gateway. So we can actually scan infected files at the gateway and remove the infection before your employee sees it and can click on it to activate some kind of malware. That kind of thing, I think, is like I said, something that people don't always consider Untangle for because they still say firewall, they still say web filter. Yes, we are those things, but we're, as you can see, a lot more than that too. So this is a very robust unified threat management system. We have really amazing software discounts for you guys in the public sector. And then, like I said, this could be installed in a number of ways, number of different methods. And then everything from remote management to all the toys you see right here would be available to you. That's about what I've got for you guys on the software. Shannon, do we have any questions that are hanging out there we can answer?
Yeah, we have some questions about, you mentioned that our pricing is online, but maybe you can kind of just show really quick how people can get to that.
You bet. So if you go to untangle.com, we have a buy tab right here where you can find our product configurator. So you can come in here and say, I want to look at, a U50XW with the complete package, all that kind of stuff. If you want, you can go all the way up to the 3000s, like I mentioned. So you can price your own packages here. You can get your own quotes. What I would say, though, is that this is more or less retail. Please don't always think this is the bottom line. Untangle is a small company and we're agile. And we do things like trade-in, trade-up programs that Shannon will mention. We do, end-of-month coupons sometimes, multi-site discounts if you're buying hardware. Just keep in mind, this is not always a bottom line. I would rather you talk to your sales rep if you have a hard number for your budget because we're Untangle. We're not one of these other bigger companies. We almost always get to that number or below it. So this is a very handy thing. I don't think a lot of companies like us do this. You usually have to go through 3 or 4 layers of phone calls to get a price. But if you need it, you can get it. This will be kind of a ballpark for you. Bottom line is basically what your sales rep will give you, though.
Great, thanks, Chad. There was a little bit of confusion about the free versus the complete package in the public sector package. Could you maybe go over that again? Sure.
If you come over here to software packages on untangle.com, you can see the comparison side by side, what we offer in our complete package versus our free package. My number one, I guess, caveat is that our free package offers you absolutely no content filtering or traffic shaping or authentication. And it, because of those things, can't get you any kind of compliance with any standards anywhere, basically. If you just need a free software firewall at your house on a Linux server, the free package is cool. I would never recommend putting it in a business environment. This is the difference here. And it wouldn't really even apply to you folks for the public sector because the discount on our public sector software is about half off anyway. So I think if you trial it and then it expires, you'll see the limitations of the free package. It does some neat things, but it will not filter the web or see mobile apps or any of that kind of stuff that's so important in that kind of environment. So when I do technical calls, scope of project calls, that kind of stuff with public sector, even at the smallest level, we always go with that public sector complete because the complete package gives you all this stuff and then that huge discount as well.
Great, thanks, Chad. There's a question about if a teacher or someone finds a video that they want to share and link it in something, how does the student access it? Is it unfiltered? Does it have to be whitelisted?
Yeah, it would most likely have to be whitelisted. Untangle does offer a temporary unblock in our web filter. So if it's something that they think, the teachers might want to unblock for students at some point, we can do a temporary unblock that requires a password. So you can give the teacher a password, and then if the student goes to that site and it gets blocked, they can say, teacher, I need the password, and they can unblock it. Otherwise, yeah, we would probably need that whitelisted for permanent access for everyone.
Great, thanks, Chad. I know we're running out of time, so if you want to go back to the slide deck really quick,
yeah, you bet.
So we can wrap this up. Yeah, so if we didn't get to your question or if you have a specific question, please email us at sales@untangle.com. We'd be happy to answer those questions for you. As Chad kind of mentioned, we have some programs in place to help with pricing. We know pricing for everyone, whether you have a budget or not, is always difficult. If you have an existing Untangle solution and are looking to trade that up, whether it be your software solution or your hardware, we do offer some special pricing and discounts for that. Also, in the if you're looking at a competitor's product, or you have a competitor's product and you're looking to go switch to Untangle, we do offer some special pricing for that as well. So please contact our sales team. They'll be happy to discuss those discounts with you. And as Chad mentioned, we have the public sector complete. So this is our complete package, but priced considerably lower than retail for qualified state and local governments, public schools, and libraries. So if you're interested in that, you can purchase it on the website or talk to a sales rep to make sure you're getting the correct discount for you. Let's see, just a few more slides. If you haven't heard RSA 2018 is one of the largest security conferences in the world. It's always in San Francisco. This year it's in April. So if you're going to be in town, going to be visiting, please stop by the booth. We have some exciting announcements that we'll be releasing, and you can come see the product, talk to us. We'd love to get your feedback on how you like the product, or if you're new to Untangle and just want to check it out, come talk to us. We'll give you a demo, some cool tchotchkes. Come say hi. I think that's about it. Like Chad mentioned, we have a vast amount of resources, the wiki, our forums, but as always, we're here to chat with you. If you just want to chat and figure out what the best solution is for you, please give us a call or email us, and we'll be happy to figure that out. Thank you, Chad, for the demo, and we hope to see you next time.